me?
Yeah.
Hello, and welcome. We're just allowing just a few moments for people to join in on the call today, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Let's see. Okay. So I'll go ahead and just talk a little bit about our host, the Center for Disability Empowerment, and then we'll turn things over to today's presenter. Today's host, the Center for Disability Empowerment, is a nonprofit organization that supports all people of any age with any disability. And we do this through 5 core services that we are federally mandated to provide, those of which being information and referral. Whatever resources we do not have as an organization, we can do the legwork to get you connected. Independent living skills. We offer training on daily living skills such as money management, time management, and simple meal prep. Advocacy, we can teach you how to be a self-advocate, but we also do bigger systems advocacy. Peer support, we are all people with disabilities, and so we are able to help you along the way through our shared experiences. And then the last component to that is the transition services, of which there are 2 parts. The first being youth transition services. I am the coordinator for that program. And then the second part is our nursing home transitions, of which Ms. Deb Peterman here is the coordinator for that. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Deb.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for part 2. We had a wonderful time together yesterday with part 1, and today we get to use some of the tools that Barbara has been explaining to us. This is a part of the grant from the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities. The grant is named Ohio Family Network, and so this presentation is done for them so that we could reach out to families like you, professionals like you, and people with disabilities just like you. I'd like to introduce my friend, Barbara Sapharas. Barb and I are both siblings, so we have that in common. And she is being used widely in Ohio. She is the Ohio ambassador for charting the life course with the Nisonger Center with OSU, the Ohio State University, and the Nexus team member for charting the life course at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, UMKC. Barbara has a vast array of experience, and I'm sure she'll touch on that. And then we'll go ahead with part 2. Barbara, it's all yours.
Thanks, Deb, and thank you, Jamie. It's so good to see you all again. I recognize the names from yesterday, so I'm not going to ask you to introduce yourself. And let me show you my slideshow. So this is part 2, and Deb already told you who I am. We talked about myself yesterday, so that's definitely enough. But I wanted to, I'm not sure how much I talked about my family life, but my brother Nick was 4 years younger than me. He was diagnosed when he was 6 months old with a developmental disability. And I was just going to go into kindergarten. So we lived in the greater Cleveland area, and he actually got home-based services within a month of his diagnosis from a private agency. He was not eligible for county board services until he was well into adulthood, and the definition changed. My brother Jim in his 30s was in an accident, and it impacted his ability to earn a living and get through his day. And so he had an acquired disability. And then in his 50s, he was diagnosed with a very rare disease that only 100 people in the United States were known to have. So just a little bit about the pictures. The top picture is Nick in the driver's seat of our Volkswagen when we were teenagers. And as I talk about outcomes, I'll refer to that picture. And the bottom right is Nick at the Cleveland Hopkins Airport with my mother, Jim, and I in the mid-90s when he told his team he wanted to go on vacation to Disney, but only himself, not with anyone else with a disability. He didn't want to go with a group. And so there are 2 caregivers who went with him. We already talked about the funding, but just to wrap up or review the principles from yesterday. The principles of charting the life course, we talk about the person in the context of their family, however they define family, biological or friendships, relationships. We'll talk today about the 6 domains in charting the life course. And yesterday we talked about the 3 buckets of support that people and families say they need information to get through their day. They want to know about goods and services, both in a system, in a public system, but also what's out in their community. And they want to connect with other people with similar experience. Today we'll talk about the 5 integrated areas of support, and we'll talk about the integrated support star. We talked about the importance of having a dream, a vision, outcomes for your life across your lifespan. So let's talk about a vision of a good life and what you want for a good quality of life. I love this screen. So often families get so caught up in the services. What do we need to do now? And they don't give themselves time or permission to think of the future. And the future is not something we just walk into, but it's something we create. So think about your future. Think about your vision that you had. Let's say when you were in high school. I know that from yesterday, the 3 of you attending all work kind of in the field. So what led to you working in this field? What was your vision? You know, my vision, I wanted to be a speech therapist from the time I was little. And you can guess why. Nick did not, Nick had very difficult speech to understand. I never had trouble understanding him. But when I said that to my 4th grade teacher, she said, "Oh, honey, do you know what a speech therapist is?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "I'm going to have you talk to the speech therapist at the school." So one day the speech therapist came and pulled me out of class and said, "Do you know what a speech therapist is? And I hear you want to be one." And I said, "I don't want to work on R's and S's. I want to work with people that have cerebral palsy and have trouble talking." And she just looked at me and went, "Okay. You probably will need to get a master's because they're changing how what you need to do to become a speech therapist." So I had a vision and it drove my choices all along. Like, what college can I go to? There weren't a whole lot of colleges that offered a master's program in speech when I was in high school. And I also had to stay home because my mother was a single mother, and I knew that part of my role in my family was to support Nick and Jim and my mother. So think about what a good life is. Someone once said, and I wish I remember who it was, said at a conference, "Without dreams, we don't have a life, and all we get is what we're given." And I think that's so true for people with disabilities and families. If we don't articulate a dream, then all we're going to get is someone telling us, "You can have this service and this service and this service." And all we get is what we're given. A good life for any of us is not only that we have dreams, but we have people who believe in us. So I tell people, don't ever say to someone, "No, you can't." So Nick wanted to go to Disney. He wanted to go alone without anybody else. His team said, "Nick, you need somebody to take care of you. we have a great idea. Why doesn't your sister take you? And I said, I have an even better idea. What if his sister doesn't take him? And so they worked with him for several years to plan that trip, find caregivers that would go with him and take care of him. And he had to figure out expenses because he had to pay for their expenses. A good life is to have what's important to us. A good life is to be respected and valued as a contributing member of our community. A good life is to have more good days than bad. None of us have all good days. I mean, hello, we don't live in utopia. A good life is to feel healthy and safe in our own definition, and all of us can attest to how that may have changed over the past 13, 14 months. And a good life is that we have control. So I don't know if you're aware of Chris Nickit. I just love his story. He is the first person with Down syndrome to compete in an Ironman competition, but also to successfully complete the Ironman competition. If you don't know what an Ironman is, and I don't have my notes in front of me, he had to swim in open water, bike, and it's like 100 and some miles biking, and then run 26 miles in, I believe it was 16, little over 16 consecutive hours. And he did it. But what I really love about his story is his parents told him, you need to write down your dreams. So on the left, you see his dreams to buy his own car, buy his own house, get a smoking hot blonde wife from Minnesota. Oh, I should tell you, he's from Florida. I have no clue why he thinks he has to get a wife from Minnesota. Have his own money to take care of his family and be a famous public speaker. There was an NBC sports show special about Chris. And if you look online, it looks like one wall in his house or bedroom is like a whiteboard, and his parents had him write down his goals every day to work towards the Ironman. The reason I share his story is the power of writing your dreams down. We know from psychological studies that if you write down your dreams, you are more likely to work towards them and achieve them. So I just love that he wrote on it. He and his parents said to him, you need to write them down. We all want a good life. And so the tool that we used is called the trajectory. And we have two bubbles in a trajectory. We want to look at what do we want in our life? And that's the blue bubble on top. And those are the categories. You know, we all want friends, we want family, we want to have enough money, but those are the categories. And I'll talk more about, we need to be more detailed. What will it look like? How do we know we've reached it? Because if I say to you, I want a good life is that I have friends, you won't know how to measure that. You won't know how to measure whether I have achieved that or not, or how to help me. I'm someone who is okay with a handful, and I mean a handful of friends. I don't need big numbers or big gatherings. I'm okay with, and it kind of scares me now because I had a very small pot of people that I interacted with during the pandemic. And now I'm like, oh, I gotta start like seeing lots of people. What am I gonna do? But just as important as asking people, what do you want, is what don't you want? And I will tell you that when I ask people with lived experience, what do you want? Usually the number one answer is a boyfriend or a girlfriend. And I think, how smart are you? Because that's the number one human need, is to be loved. When I ask people with lived experience, what don't you want? The number one answer is drama. And I have to ask them, tell me what drama means to you. And it has meant all sorts of different things, from, I don't want people in my face. I had one young man who did this. I don't want people in, and he was right in front of me, poking my nose in my face, telling me what to do. I said, you need to write that down. Do you need help? Can someone help you write that down? Somebody else said, I don't want to be around loud people. In my day program, they're loud. On the bus, they're loud. I go home, they're loud. I'm sick of loud people. I don't want people bossing me around all day. And so when I ask families, what don't you want? The most common answer is, I don't want my loved one to be taken advantage of, physically, emotionally, sexually, financially. And what do they want? They want their loved one to be happy. They want their loved one to have friends that are more than just family. And if for children, when I ask parents, I want them to be invited to birthday parties. I want them to have somebody call or come to the door and ask if they can play or have a play date. So again, the number one human need, to be loved, to be part of a group. This is called a trajectory for exploring. I call it the simple trajectory. All it asks is, what do you want? Or what do you want to avoid? I find that when I talk with families and guide them through this and ask people with lived experience, stuff comes out pretty quick. Sometimes people give me system goals. Like I've had a lot of people tell me, my SSA says that I am on the path to employment and I have to get a job in the community. And I'm like, that's great. Now tell me what you want. And what does a job in the community mean to you? What do you want to be doing? So it's not just ask the question and write it down what they say, but have the conversation, empower them to think beyond just services. Same with families. You know, if they start saying, I want them to live in the community, what does that mean? What will that look like? I've had people tell me, I want to live in the community. And I'm like, where do you live now? It's like, you know, that's a jargon, that's system jargon. Tell me what you want to do. And people will then tell me, I want my own place, or I want a key to my own house. I don't want to have somebody let me in. So it helps start the conversation. What do you want? So there's only 3 of you. I'm not going to put you in breakout rooms, but what I would like you to do is in the chat, just type a few things. What's a good life for you? A good life for me right now, I'm retired. So, you know, part of my concern in retirement was I want to have stuff to do. I want to feel like I'm contributing. And even though I could retire, I still felt that I had some knowledge and enthusiasm. And so my good life was that I could continue to support people and families. And I wasn't even concerned about whether I got paid for, don't tell anybody, but whether I got paid for it or not. But I just wanted to do something of value and worth for myself. A good life for me is to stay healthy, because I am a caregiver of a family member who needs supports on a daily basis. A good life for me is that I do maintain my close group of friends, and that I continue to live in my own place and can support myself. What do I want to avoid is illness, and what else? Not being able to take care of my family members. So I see that you typed, some of you typed, and I'm going to look in. Stay healthy, have financial ability to have a fun and healthy lifestyle. Oh, Julie, I'm so glad you said that, because I also want to travel. I'm a little hesitant right now, but I do like traveling and I like going different places. Continue to be active and a part of the community that I live in. Happy with my husband and my fur baby. I love it. I love this. Jamie, thank you. Growing relationship with your in-laws and being around them makes my life better. How awesome. Oh, Jamie, awesome. I want to avoid toxic people. Duh. And negativity. Thank you, everybody. So think about what you just shared, what you just heard me read out of chat, and I appreciate you sharing that. This is what we want to hear from people, not the goals that we've told them. But what is it that they really want? And I will tell you, I've worked with groups of people with lived experience, and once I tell them, that's great, that's what we've told you you need to do, now tell me what you want. People are able to share. This is an expanded trajectory. So on the right, you see vision of what you want to avoid. But in charting the life course, we know the importance of past experiences. So if you think about what you want, like I wanted to be a speech pathologist. So what were my past life experiences? Well, hello. My brother had therapy. I never saw the therapist work with Nick because, you know, they took him down this long hall and an hour later he came out, but they gave him homework. Well, who do you think did the homework with him? You know, my mother would tell me, go sit with your brother and practice his words. I was like, okay, go play with your brother. Make sure when he wants to play with his Hot Wheel cars, he tells you the colors. Okay, I listened to my mother. Okay. Were there any past life experiences that took you to where you don't want to go? I always tell people, think about COVID. You know, did you work at home before and you liked it? Or did you work at home before and you didn't like it? A past negative experience during this time of COVID might be that you are living with somebody who is high risk. And so that's a negative. Oh gosh, I got to watch what I'm doing because I don't want to go down towards that negative box. And then the middle is moving forward. What do we need to do to keep going on the trajectory of a good life? You know, so it was getting masks. I mean, who had masks on March 10th? I was so grateful that a friend of mine is a seamstress, and she texted me one day and said, dropping off, don't open the door. And she made some Greek food, but on top she put masks for George and me. And I was like, oh my gosh, we have masks. Because I was wearing a bandana over my face because I couldn't get a mask. And then what did you want to avoid? What did you have to learn during COVID? We all had to learn Zoom, right? And I don't know how many times I still have to tell people to unmute and mute. So we haven't quite mastered that skill. But think about the importance of past events on your trajectory and what you need to do moving forward. The trajectory, if we look at the one-page person-centered description from yesterday, the trajectory and the integrated star, those three tools really give us a person-centered plan. Because on the trajectory, we have the vision or the outcomes. We have a little bit about history, the past life experiences, and we have the future steps, which are your action steps, or how are you going to move towards that? So I already said, think about the trajectory for your life during the pandemic. What's a good life? What did you want to avoid? What past experiences helped you? Did you use grocery delivery services before? Were you pretty confident shopping online? And then what past experiences maybe led you to the negative? You know, maybe you didn't have masks. Maybe you didn't like working from home. Maybe you live with somebody who's high risk. Maybe, I don't know what else. Maybe you didn't like homeschooling, you know, the fact that your kids were home and you were all trying to figure out, how do we use our bandwidth and how do I balance home and family and school and everything else? And what did you have to develop? Did you have to learn skills? Did you have to teach any of your family members how to use FaceTime? How many of you had family members that you had to keep saying, tilt the phone, I'm looking at your ceiling, I want to see your face, tilt the phone. My mother's experiencing dementia and is in a nursing home, and I went from being able to see her 4 times a week to not being able to see her for I don't even know how many months. They opened and then they shut down just as quickly because of the increase in cases. So that was a negative, like, and she wouldn't answer her phone anymore. I had to, put requests in, and she did not recognize me on FaceTime. And she would say, no, that's not her. Like, yes, it is, Mom. And what did you have to develop? Did you have to learn how to use Zoom and Teams and all sorts of other platforms? So the trajectory really helps facilitate a conversation about personal outcomes. I tell people, don't ever do this in a meeting. This is not something you do in an IEP meeting, IFSP meeting, ISP meeting, no P's, no P's. This is something the person does with their family or with whoever they want in their own time at their comfort level. Now, other people can do a trajectory. The parents can do a trajectory, and from their perspective, but it's their trajectory for their loved one. I had Mom do a trajectory once, Dad do a trajectory because they weren't on the same page. They had some differences, and the young man. And then I told them, you need to compare because I've seen all of them and they're pretty similar. And the young man was scared. I don't want to share with my parents. They're going to make me do stuff I don't want to do. And I said, they've showed me theirs and it's pretty close to what you said. So you can get different perspectives, but it also helps the team stay focused on what the person wants. And are we doing it? Are we helping them stay away from what they don't want? None of you mentioned you were working in EI, but EI staff say really they want families to do this before they leave EI so they can take it to the next transition stage and share it. You can do a trajectory on the whole life, or you can do it very specific. I've seen people do a trajectory for going on vacation, paying off their home, planning a wedding, planning a surgery. What else? Getting a job. When the pandemic first started, a friend of mine who's got a 35-year-old son, and she's an ambassador and also a person-centered thinking trainer, did it for her son for the 3 months because we thought by the end of summer in 2020, we would be out of this. Haha. And so she said, let's plan from now till September. Just a short period of time. Haha. But anyway, here's a picture of people who did their trajectory using pictures out of magazines. Some of them wrote, some of them drew pictures, but that's their trajectory, what they want in their life. Here's a trajectory that I actually witnessed, a group of self-advocates going through Project STIR training. And we asked them each to write one thing per Post-it note that they wanted in their life and one thing they didn't want. And we had them put it on the wall. And a county board sponsored the training. It was Stark County, which is the Canton, Ohio area. And the superintendent came at the end of the 2.5 days. And I said, you need to go read the trajectory because that's what your staff, that's what the people you support want and what they don't want. And about a month later on their Facebook page, I saw their newsletter, and on the front, there were these Post-it notes, a couple of them. And I thought, what the heck is this? I opened it up and the superintendent had written an article about the Project STIR training and how people they support had shared the kind of life they want and what they want to avoid. And he actually had some of the Post-it notes in the article. And I thought how empowering that was for him to actually include that with their individually written notes in his newsletter. I told you we talk about 6 domains. So if any of you have been around for a long time, you know that we talk about skill areas: grooming and hygiene, money management, community integration, and health and safety. And but when we talk with friends or when we meet somebody new, we don't ask them, do you brush your teeth every day? Did you take a shower? We ask them, what's the first question we ask somebody when we meet them? What do you do? Okay, daily life and employment. We might then ask, where do you live? So I met a sibling on a national call, and she said that I recently moved from Nashville to Cleveland Heights, Ohio, to be closer to my parents and my brother. And I was like, oh my gosh, I grew up in Cleveland Heights. So I'm chatting with her. Where in Cleveland Heights do you live? I lived on this street. And she told me, and I said, oh my gosh, have you explored this area of Cleveland Heights? Oh yeah, I've been there. Have you walked the parks about that border Cleveland Heights and Shaker? And there's this really cool path here. So I said, I still go to Cleveland Heights. My church is in Cleveland Heights. She said, what church do you go to? I told her. She goes, all my neighbors go there. Do you know them? I said, oh yeah. So we had this whole conversation and it was about through these life domains. Where do you live? What do you do? Who do you know? What do you do to stay healthy? Do you feel safe? And then of course her advocacy and engagement was that both of us were pretty active with supporting siblings and families. And it was so funny that I had this conversation with this woman using the life domains. So what I did, and I know that no one has told me they work in early childhood, but people are like, families have said, why do I have to think about employment when I have a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old? But even as young children, for daily life and employment, are we teaching them how to make choices? And it doesn't have to be, oh, tell me what you want for breakfast or what you want to wear, but do you want to wear the red shirt or the blue shirt? Or do you want cereal? You know, you want this cereal or do you want oatmeal? We're not saying give them the free reign of the world, because none of us gets that. It's, you know, we have closed choices. Do we give kids the opportunity to make mistakes? If you think about probably a toy we all played with the blocks, and we had to put them in the board with the shapes, that wasn't so we learned the names of a rectangle and an oval and a circle or a star. It was, if it doesn't fit, what did I learn and what do I need to do next? And what did we learn? Try another space and see if it fits there. Do we have chores? In school age, are we helping kids spend time with other kids and do the things that all kids do? Are we building an after-school routine? And are we asking them, what do you want to do or what do you want to be when you grow up? Not because they're tied into it, but we can see their interests and provide them experiences and opportunities. At transition age, are we helping people find volunteer opportunities? Work opportunities. I told you I attend a church in Cleveland Heights. We have a festival, we have fish fries, and I can't tell you how often I have parents say to me, can my son or daughter help you at the fish fry because they need to get volunteer hours? And I'm like, absolutely. Absolutely. And one time I had a young man help me, and I knew he was on the spectrum. And Dad was like, you know, just tell him what you want him to do. And I told him, and he was phenomenal. He actually ran orders to the kitchen for me. But he was so fast that sometimes if people changed their mind, I had to go, come back, I have to change it. Because his job was deliver them quickly, and he delivered them quickly. And then as adults, are we talking to people about income and benefits and even developing their own business? Another area that families talk about a lot and people with disabilities is social. So in early childhood, are we helping them have play dates? I know a lot of parents who became the scout leader or the Sunday school teacher because then they could pull, they didn't wait for their kid to be invited. They pulled other kids into their child's lives. Are they looking at adaptive rec devices? You know, adapted bicycles? Does your community have a playground that's accessible for all? It's not just for kids with disabilities, but it's for everyone. For school age, are we looking at assistive tech? And I don't mean just devices, I mean anything. I heard one man talk about, he loves eggs, boiled eggs, and he has cerebral palsy and he has some spasticity. And so his family and his provider are very concerned about him boiling eggs because he might knock the pot and get burned. And he found this egg cooker that he doesn't have to touch hot water. And it's, I had never heard of it. I looked it up on Amazon and they cost anywhere from $15 to $30, depending on how many eggs you want to cook at one time. He can make his own eggs and he doesn't need to have staff do it. So I think that's so cool, thinking beyond to any technology. And then in transition age, are we teaching kids about social media? Are we helping them be part of youth groups? And in adulthood, I can't tell you how many young adults I've met in their 20s, early 20s, and I ask them, do you have a best friend? Oh, yeah. Oh, how do you keep in touch with them? Oh, I don't know where they are. We were best friends in school, and they don't even know where they are now. They have no way how to connect with them. Are we supporting people to think about their valued role in their community and in their faith community? And for community living, are we looking at structuring our house so that babies can play? For early childhood, I know we moved to get Nick into a better school district. So my parents were not happy with the school services where we lived. And we lived in their dream house that they built in their dream neighborhood. And we moved because of the schools. Are we looking at what community events are out there? You know, what's out there? Sorry about that. What's out there for kids? Are there rec courses or classes or dance schools or whatever to get out and play? For school age, are we looking at sensory needs? Are we looking at helping kids be part of carpools so they get to meet other people? And to learn how to clean house, keep up the house so that we're preparing them. And then are we even talking about, do you want to live with your parents? Do you want to live in your own place? Do you want to live with a roommate or a housemate? What kind of help will you need? Can you afford to live out? And then how will you get around? I know one family who has 2 sons with disabilities, and they wanted them to be able to live in their own house, but they wanted to make sure their one son who rode his bike and knew how to get to the community center, the grocery store, the drugstore to get his snacks, that he could ride his bike. And so they looked at housing where he could get to those places that he knew how to get to, and had a traffic light, because in order to get to the community center, no matter what, you had to cross a very busy street. So they were like, we got to make sure we look where there's going to be a traffic light not too far away. This is called the vision tool. I love this tool. Teachers have used this to help kids think about their life in the future. SSAs, this is something, or service coordinators, this is something you can give the family. They can do a sheet from their perspective. The young adult or teenager or school age, you can talk to them about it and record their information. And it gives, in the first column, you see the icon. In the second column, there's a short description What does this mean? And in the third column, people can write down what they envision. Like, what am I going to be doing during the day? Where do I want to live? And this is a good way to help people think about it versus just saying, what's your vision? What do you want to do in your life? So it helps them organize their thoughts and think about the information. It's also, you can get multiple perspectives. And like I said before, identify those common areas and identify the areas where there are differences and what do we need to do to clarify these areas. So we talk about a trajectory of a good life. On the bottom of the trajectory line, you see the typical transitions through the service system. Getting a diagnosis, going to early childhood, leaving early childhood, going to school age. On the top, you see some life transitions, having chores, getting an allowance, learning to say no, going to birthday parties, excuse me, having a summer job, making mistakes. One of the resources that I really like for professionals, but also for families, is the Experiences and Questions booklet. And for each domain, like daily living and employment, there is a 2-page spread going from prenatal to aging. And so people can look at what should we be considering in the life stage that we're in. But let me go back to the previous slide. We want people to look at that life stage they're in, so transition or school age, but we also want people to look at the life stage before. So if they're in transition, let's look at school age. Did you think about all these things in school age? Are you thinking about these things in transition? And then let's anticipate the next life stage, which is adulthood. None of us thinks about retirement on our 65th birthday. We start thinking about retirement decades ahead of time. What do I need to do? Do I have Social Security? Do I need to open an IRA? Will I have my house paid off by then? Do I have enough money in the bank? How can I save more? How can I not spend as much? We do anticipatory guidance, thinking ahead. We need to help families start thinking ahead and not just looking at this ISP or IEP year and this year of life. We also have resources called quick guides, and you can download these on LifeCourseTools.com. You can give them to the people you work with, and it's 4 pages for each life stage. And on those 4 pages are the 6 life domains and things to consider. So if they don't want to look at a booklet, you can give them these 4 pagers. Both of these resources are on LifeCourseTools.com. Look at Life Course Library, and then it's a drop down. Go to Life Course Library. Then under that, go to Exploring Life Stages, and you'll find these resources. They're free. You can download them. You can email them to people, families to think about so that they have time to consider, what is it that I need to think about? What does this really mean? So for the trajectory, we want people and families to have time to pull together their thoughts of their vision of a good life. Staff can start the conversation. I tell staff, you can write what they tell you on the trajectory, but then give it to them. The paper belongs to the person. Families and people with lived experiences have said that the paper gives them paper power and paper courage to speak up. The trajectory should never be done in a team meeting, and it's not done by a team. So we've got the trajectory, we've got an outcome. Now we look at using the integrated STAR to think of possible supports. So let's talk about vacation. My brother Nick said, I want to go to Disney all by myself. I don't want to go with anybody else with a disability. That was his outcome. That was in the white star, the white part of the star. We always start with personal strengths and assets. So, let me talk about the split star. You can also use the star to look at what do we have currently, what supports are in place currently, which ones do we need to develop. We also know that the integrated star helps us be in line with the CMS settings rule, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which says we need to promote full access to community life and promote lives that people want to live. So let me talk about Nick and going to Disney. His personal strengths, number one, is that he knew what he wanted to do. Number two, he told people. So he said, I want to go to Disney. I don't want to go with anybody else that has a disability. I want to go by myself. Other strengths, he knew how to save money. He knew how to plan. What relationships are out there to help him? Now, these are the categories, but remember, he wanted to go to Disney. So he had to think about who's been to Disney. But the fact that he articulated it, all these people came forth. I just went to Disney last year. I got the planning book. Let me give it to you. We're going in 2 months. What do you want to know? I'll tell you. I'll come back. I'll look for you. Family said, oh my gosh, if he wants to go to Disney, does he need anything? Does he need luggage? Does he need clothing, certain clothing? They said, we buy him gifts anyway. Let's buy him something he needs. And so people rallied because he shared his vision, and people who could support him self-identified, plus he was able to, of course, family supported him. You know, we said, yes, you can. And a couple of times I would say to the team, how much money does he still need? And they'd be like, oh, he has to save it all himself. And I'm like, no, he doesn't. You all probably, your parents probably paid for your college. They probably have paid for you to go on vacation. It's none of your business. So, I'm not going to ask you what your family did for you, but tell me what he needs. Technology. Nick knew how to use a laptop, so he knew how to use the internet. He could search, but other technology. He had a power chair that cost more than my car, my minivan. And so how the heck is that going to go to Florida on an airplane? Oh, we learned. Oh my, we don't even want to go there. That's a whole other hour. But anyway, and then one of his staff said, you know, he's going to be in the sun. And even though he tans well, you know, Disney is hot. And so they were like, let's look at, she was like, I'm going to get Nick a sunshade for his wheelchair. And I'm like, and she wanted to do that personally. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is so cool. So just thinking about all sorts of adaptations. Community resources. Where do we go if we want to find out about vacation? We go online. Technology. Let's think about it. Not just an iPad or a laptop, but I would look at TripAdvisor. I would look at Google Maps. I would use a GPS. Where can we all go? We can go to the library. We can go to a travel agent. All sorts of, in fact, one of our family members said, I know a travel agent. If you need help, I bet I could, you know, she would do well by you. So all sorts of things. And then eligibility specific. Nick's provider helped him plan it. But think about you and I if we want to go on vacation. I'm at the stage of my life that I'm eligible for senior discounts, and you can bet I use them. I belong to BJ's Wholesale Club. I use the discounts from BJ's. I sign up for hotel points. Not everybody can get them. You have to sign up for them, but you know, so I use my hotel points. I use my travel points. So for the integrated star, we want people to use the STAR to brainstorm. We always start with personal strengths and assets. Why? Because we want it to be a strengths-based approach. And we always end with eligibility specific. Why? Because a lot of times people want to go right towards eligibility. We can pay for this, we can't pay for this. And we want people to really look at what are the resources that you have personally, through your relationships, through technology, what's out there for everybody in the community. And what we don't want is to start with eligibility specific. So for the integrated STAR, it really helps have conversation about resources. Staff have really liked it because they've learned about resources they didn't know, that they can then share with other families. And if I don't think any of you are, oh yeah, well, I think you're an employment navigator, but if anybody's an SSA, you know the angst of when someone asks you for something and you know you can't fund it. And this helps you think about what's out there that's available to anyone. And people have said, I learned so much more about my community as we problem solved and used the STAR. And for the STAR, it's best to do as a group because then you get more background and more support. So one SSA was working with a 14-year-old, and he told her, and his mother said, he wants to raise an animal, he wants to butcher it, and he wants to cut the meat. And the SSA, I was doing a series with them, and she came and she goes, oh my God, can we talk about this young man, this teenager I'm working with? How the heck am I supposed to help him? And so we talked about the STAR, and she went to the mom and she said, let's think about, she said, I don't know what I can do. But she had mom look at it. Personal strengths, he knew what he wanted. Relationships, she said, we just moved here, and it was a little town in a rural part of Ohio. And she said, my son can walk down to the town square, and there's a butcher shop on the town square. And so my son has gone in and he's developed quite a relationship with this butcher. And the butcher gave my son his own butcher knife. And everybody in the room went, and she said, but mom said he's careful. And the butcher is showing him how to cut meat. So then other people in the room said, have you talked to him about 4-H? Does he know about Future Farmers of America, FFA? Do you know about the Ohio State Extension Program? This poor SSA was like, I've never heard of any of that. And she's writing everything down. She goes, I got to tell mom about these things. So it really helped when they did it as a group, and all these SSAs were throwing things out to her, and she was like, I've never even heard of this. And other SSAs were like, wait a minute, don't go so fast. I want to write this all down. So it's a great way to really learn about what's out there. So in closing, let's talk about quality. As we are supporting and empowering people, and we look at quality, we should be asking ourselves, are the services and supports helping people have the life they want? Are the services and supports helping them stay away from that life they want to avoid? And if the trajectory goes down towards what we want to avoid, are we helping them get back on track? I am guessing that every single one of us would say that last March, our life might have been on the path of a good life, and all of a sudden it went down. We couldn't go grocery shopping. We couldn't go to our faith-based gatherings anymore. We couldn't see family. However, what did we do to get back on track? How did we adjust? And our services and supports helping the person have a balance of what's important to them and what's important for health, safety, and a valued role in the community. The reason I use those terms, important to and for, is because they are required by Medicaid to be in plans. So think about, do you know people's gifts? Because we can't help them be seen as valued members of their community if we don't know their gifts. Do we know what a good life is for them? If we don't, we can't help them have a good life, okay? Do we know what's important to them? If we don't, how are we helping them have a good life? And how are we helping people have the life they value and share their gifts so they're valued? So please remember, whenever you're using a person-centered thinking skill or a charting the life course tool, that you identify, you know in your head, I'm using this because it will help me or help them. And please explain it to people. Don't just say, here's a form, I think, let's use this form or let's use a trajectory, but tell them why, tell them how you think it will help them. Know that you don't have to use any of the tools on everybody. And you really should use the tool on yourself before you use them with anybody else. So try doing your own trajectory. What is a good life for you? What do you want to avoid? Do an integrated star. Think about anything, taking a vacation, getting back out in the world, retiring, anything, but think about using the trajectory and the star on yourself. And also remember that the paper, whether it's the one-page description, the trajectory, or the star, or the whole portfolio, belongs to the person or the family, and you keep a copy. People have said, this gives me paper power. I'm prepared. I can speak up at my meeting. Or if I do get stuck or anxious, I can hand the paper to them and say, here's what I put down. So please remember, 5 minutes, the person in the context of family, the 6 domains that we talked about, not skill areas, but things to consider. Are they happening in the person's life? Are we supporting them to have them? Are we providing supports so that they can explore and have a life? The 3 buckets of support: having information, having goods and services, and connecting with others. The 5 areas of the integrated star. And if you don't have the star, I use my fingers. Always starting with personal strengths and assets, relationships, technology, what's out in the community for everybody, and then looking at eligibility specific. Sorry, it's garbage and recycle day, and they make a lot of noise. So looking at that integrated star, the importance of having a trajectory and articulating it, sharing with others so we can fulfill that CMS mandate of helping people have lives they value. And that we need to have a trajectory across the lifespan. It can change. The trajectory could be for a specific domain. It could be for a short period of time, or it could be for your life, your whole life. Again, just a reminder, please sign up on frnohio.org. If you're interested in other groups hearing, let us know. We have our virtual showcase on June 3rd and 4th. And again, lifecoursetools.com and some other resources. And I am going to stop sharing and I am going to ask you, I know you've written in chat, I got to look real quick. What have you written? But can you think of, if you can unmute, if you want to share how you think you might use a trajectory, the vision tool, or the integrated star with somebody? And also, okay, why can't I see the chat? Oh, there it is. What you appreciated about today. Oh, thank you, Julie. Yeah, there's a lot of community supports out there that we don't even realize. Oh, good. You've gotten good at Zoom, Jamie. I still don't unmute. Hi, Julie. You want to, share something? Any of your thoughts?
I am unmuted. Yes, I just would like to thank you very much, Barbara. It has been very, very informative and just refreshing, a refreshing perspective. We utilize a lot of the life course tools and mechanisms for, I'll say it's kind of innovative how we're utilizing those, not necessarily person-centered, but business-centered, and how a business is going to incorporate the employment perspective, and even how our day programs slash, that type of sheltered environment has provided that, utilized that life course technique to project where their business will be in order to I guess, compete with the wave of the future and to be in that model of future perspective. I hope that makes sense.
That's awesome. Yes, you're at Hamilton. Are you Hamilton County?
Hamilton County, correct.
Yeah. I've known a couple of county boards that have used the tools at the agency and at level to do some of their strategic planning. So I think it's exciting to use them with businesses to also look at what's our role, how can we support, and even some of our community partners, like what can we do to work together to support the families in our county. That's awesome. Very, very nice. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I think, we are at time. Oh my goodness. So thank you all. Have a good day. Thanks, Julie. Good seeing you again.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara, for
Bye-bye.
everything. Take care.
Absolutely.